On the quiet cobbled streets of Vienna, a young orphan boy named Milan sat on the cold pavement, hugging his knees to his chest. His clothes were tattered, his face smudged with dust, and his eyes carried the weight of loneliness. He watched as people hurried past him, some lost in conversations, others too busy with their own lives to notice a boy who had nothing. The world felt like a vast, unkind place. As the sun began to set, Milan wandered through the city, his stomach aching with hunger. He found himself on an old stone bridge, sitting at the edge with his feet dangling over the water. The reflection of the city lights shimmered on the river's surface, creating a beautiful but distant world, one he felt he could never be a part of. His fingers traced invisible patterns on the stone, his thoughts heavy with uncertainty. Shivering in the cool evening breeze, Milan sat outside a small bakery, the warm, inviting scent of freshly baked bread filling the air. His stomach growled as he watched through the window, seeing families laughing together over steaming pastries and warm drinks. He rested his chin on his knees, wondering what it must feel like to belong somewhere, to have a home and someone who cared. Not far from the bakery, in a quiet corner of the city, an elderly watchmaker named Klaus sat in his modest little shop. The warm glow of candlelight flickered on his wise, wrinkled face as he adjusted his glasses, carefully inspecting the inner workings of an antique pocket watch. His silver hair, neatly combed back, and his steady hands spoke of years of patience and dedication. As Klaus glanced outside his shop, he noticed Milan curled up against the cold night air. The boy looked exhausted, his small frame trembling. With a kind heart, Klaus stepped outside, carrying a steaming bowl of soup. He knelt beside the boy and offered it to him. "Eat, child," he said gently. "Warm yourself." Milan hesitated for a moment before accepting, his hands wrapping tightly around the warmth of the bowl. Inside the small watch shop, Milan sipped the soup slowly, his eyes wandering around the tiny clocks and watches that adorned the shelves. The rhythmic ticking filled the silence, creating an unusual sense of comfort. Klaus watched him with a knowing smile, recognizing something in the boy's eyes, an unspoken curiosity, a quiet hunger beyond just food. Milan's fingers traced the surface of an old broken pocket watch that lay on the counter. The intricate gears and tiny moving parts fascinated him. Klaus noticed the boy's interest and picked up a delicate screwdriver. With careful precision, he began adjusting the gears, the ticking sound slowly returning to life. Milan watched, mesmerized, his hunger momentarily forgotten. Klaus placed the screwdriver in front of Milan and gently pushed the broken watch toward him. "Would you like to try?" he asked. Milan hesitated, his fingers hovering over the tiny tools. No one had ever given him a chance before. He picked up the screwdriver with trembling hands, his heart pounding as he leaned in closer. With slow, careful movements, Milan tried to mimic what he had seen Klaus do. The tiny parts felt impossible to hold, and his fingers fumbled. Frustration flickered in his eyes, but Klaus remained patient, guiding him with soft instructions. "Take your time," he said. Every great watchmaker started just like this. The night stretched on as Milan remained by Klaus's side, carefully placing gears and adjusting springs. The warmth of the shop, the steady ticking of the clocks, and the quiet encouragement of Klaus made him feel something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Days turned into weeks, and Milan kept coming back. He now sat at a wooden workbench, adjusting a tiny watch spring with intense concentration. His hands were steadier now, his grip firmer. The once hesitant boy was beginning to change, his confidence growing with each passing day. One evening, the sound of the shop bell ringing startled Milan. A wealthy man in an elegant suit stepped inside, his sharp eyes scanning the shop. He watched as Milan worked, his movements precise and focused. "He's learning fast," the man remarked to Klaus, impressed by the boy's dedication. Klaus took an old broken watch from a drawer and placed it in Milan's hands. "Fix this," he said. Milan took a deep breath, his fingers moving skillfully as he began working on the delicate mechanism. The wealthy man folded his arms, watching intently, Milan's hands moved with newfound confidence, his concentration unwavering. Klaus exchanged a knowing glance with the wealthy man, pride evident in his eyes. "He has the touch," the man said, "the heart of a true watchmaker." After what felt like hours of work, Milan finally finished. He held up the watch, its hands ticking perfectly once more. Klaus inspected it, then smiled. "Perfect," he said. Milan's heart swelled with pride, the kind he had never known before. The wealthy man stepped forward and shook Milan's hand firmly. "You have a gift," he said. "Don't waste it." His words ignited something inside Milan, an ambition, a dream he never thought possible. For the first time, Milan stepped out of the shop, not as an orphan, but as a young apprentice. He looked up at the city around him, no longer feeling lost. He had a purpose now, a path ahead. That evening, Klaus handed Milan a book on watchmaking. "Keep learning," he advised. "Your journey is just beginning." Milan nodded, eager to absorb every word. With time, Milan became more than just an apprentice. He took on responsibilities, fixing watches on his own, assisting customers, and even helping Klaus organize the shop. It wasn't just a place to learn anymore, it was home. One afternoon, Klaus stood beside Milan as he adjusted a watch on display. With a warm smile, he placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You've come a long way, my boy." Years passed, and Milan grew into a skilled young watchmaker. He now worked with speed and precision, his hands moving effortlessly over delicate mechanisms. One day, the wealthy man returned to the shop. Watching Milan work, he smiled. "I told you he had a gift," he said to Klaus, nodding with approval. The man made an offer, an opportunity for Milan to work in a grand workshop with the best watchmakers in the city. "This is your chance," he said, "to become something greater." Milan hesitated. He looked at Klaus, searching for guidance. The old man simply smiled. "Go, Milan. This is what you were meant for." With a deep breath, Milan walked into the grand workshop. The room was filled with luxurious timepieces, expert craftsmen, and a world of endless possibilities. Years later, Milan stood proudly in his own watch shop, the sign above the door reading, "Milan's Timepieces." He had become a master of his craft, a name respected in the city. Customers admired his handcrafted watches, each a masterpiece of precision and artistry. His journey, once uncertain, had led him to success. One evening, Milan looked at the first watch he had ever repaired. He smiled, remembering the boy who once sat outside a bakery, lost and hungry. He returned to the old shop, finding Klaus sitting by the window. Milan placed a newly crafted watch in his mentor's hands. Klaus smiled, his eyes filled with pride. As the city clock tower chimed, Milan and Klaus sat together, watching the sunset. The young orphan had become a man, and time had woven their lives together in a way neither could have imagined.